Hello everybody, I am Justin Beal. Today we're going to talk about from concept to code, leveraging LLMs for agile incidents. It's not just LLMs, it's just when we talk about AI, LLMs are the beginning of madness and they're very accessible to most of us, so that's the reason we kind of focus on LLMs, so traditional AI and everything else still applies very deeply into products. It's just easier to take LLMs and update your processes and integrate them into your current content generation workflows. So real quick question here, who's an engineer? Couple engineers, okay. Product people? 1, 2, QA people? Okay. Anybody that I missed? Any executives or leaders or?
Yeah, dev team manager.
Dev team manager? Okay. And managers. Fantastic. So I'm trying to figure out where to gear this in because there's a lot to talk about. So what we're going to talk about today is integration of LLMs into agile processes. We're going to see how we can AI offer enhancements to XP practices. Does anybody here do XP stuff? Like closer to the book? I am a XP software consultant. So I go into organizations and I help do test-driven development, help people work with customers, I help upscale engineers, I Scrum Master certified, Product Owner certified, Advanced Scrum Developer certified, the Pro Kanban certification, and I got a dating safe certification because it's hard to avoid that nowadays. If you're a consultant, right? I mean, like it's hard, like you gotta have some kind of scale and framework. And then because when you present, you need to make up acronyms. So I made up acronyms for a bunch of things on Horizons that we'll talk about, which are vision, which is more like your increments, your 1 to 3 month planning horizon. We have adapt, which is like your iterations. So that's like a 1 to 3 week horizon. And then you have leap, which is your actual execution. And we'll go through that. So most of the images here were generated by AI or Midjourney or something like that. So if you have questions about that. I've been doing this for almost 20 years. I love software development. I fell into Agile. I found XP and said there's no other way to develop it. I don't know if anybody's had a similar trajectory or wherever you landed, where it's like, I started on this thing, I found Agile, wow, this is acting cool. So let's set the stage. Why would we need any kind of like AI or assistance in software development, right? Does anyone here ever have a project that ran over schedule? Yeah. What about, I hate the word resources, but resource and staffing issues? Yes, I call them meat widgets. I hate the word resource with a passion. I would rather you call me a meat widget or an individual staff or something like that. But as I get into bigger organizations, they're always like, we don't have enough resources. I'm like, you mean machines? Like, no, people. Like, oh, I didn't realize you can split a person in half like a resource and get 50% productivity on each side. How many people here are split on multiple projects? Oh yeah, 50-50, 8% on one, 92 on another, right? Depending upon how your org breaks that up. If you take a person and you split them, you do not get the equal parts. You get a diminished part on each side. You could say 50-50, but if you have 2 number 1 priorities, one of them takes precedence, no matter what. And that leads to bottlenecks and other things. So the role of AI and XP, right? We could boost efficiencies, right? Like we can make people better at their jobs. We can take that practice of XP, right? If something's good, let's turn it all the way up to effing 11, right? What are the big things that we find? And AI enhances XP's continuous feedback loops, right? So now we're talking about AI product development, from user story to deployment. So I have a video if this does not work. But we're going to try to do a live demo of some cool stuff that I've been playing with, and we'll see how it goes. So I have several agents I created, as Carlo said, and one of them is a product owner. So if I go into OpenAI Assistance, I want to clear this out. This is my product owner. Here is his prompt. It is very complex and long. Here is the data my product owner knows about. It knows about itself, it knows about a Trello backlog. It is actually hooked up, as Carlo said, in an ML pipeline, so that every time I rebuild it, it scrapes this Trello board and knows everything about the product as far as its current state. You can do this with Jira, any other platform that you choose. So we'll try it real quick and say, what user story is in progress? Let's hope it comes back with the right. And I'm using OpenAI here, and typically what they do is they'll have annotations and other things. It'll actually show some stuff. See how it's saying running retrieval? It's actually scanning all of its retrieval context. And see how it's got that, I'm pointing my screen like you guys can see. You see the little one here? This is an annotation. It picked it up off the Trello board. The implement basic authorization for displaying assistance. Let's see if that is the active title. Boom. So how many product owners here tend to just answer the same question over and over and over about status? What's being worked on? What's done? When are we going to release? You could feed all of that information into an agent and then free yourself up for other tasks. Right? Status reporting is something that LLMs and AI are fantastic at. Humans do it good too, but we are better at other things, right? Creative tasks. So let's clear this out real quick. So we have our product owner as an AI assistant. Now this is never a replacement for a person, right? I'm not gonna have this system run on its own. There's always gonna be some human in the loop, making sure and verifying, but what I'm trying to do is augment my current capabilities. So I have right here a little bit of prompt that I set up, right? It said, I noticed the response from the agent is just raw text in my UI. I am taking the response from the assistant and just putting it in a text message component for the user to view. Could we have the message text format the messages using Markdown? We already did this somewhere in the app. Can you write me a user story for this? So real quick, I'm gonna come over to, this is the app that I'm working on. And if we let it load, we can do it locally, it doesn't look quite nice. All right, so it's got Google. Yep, let's do this. And then right here, I can say, can you tell me about the system and make sure it is formatted to highlight key points. And this is, I'm still working on the UI, this is what I just do in my fun tab. And what it's doing is it's going out to this chat with the Systify, a separate agent, and it is not working. Fantastic, let's do it locally real quick. I was trying to mess with things within the demo, or when, Corey, right? No, Carlos. When Carlos was talking and I broke some stuff. So thank you, live demo guys. But let's say, can you format, oh, I'm sorry, can you tell me about the system and format it so key points are highlighted. All right. It doesn't care to let me spell things. So hopefully this one works. And if not, we might pivot to a video. So it's going through, this looks great, fantastic, okay. So this is what I was talking about right here, right? When I was talking to when I was trying to make that prompt, you see how everything here is just raw text. This is all Markdown, so it can be formatted in a pretty way. But right now my UI just does not help my user. So I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna run that, right? So we want to update that previous screen to have Markdown in the display. And what I'm doing is running retrieval again, it's doing its thing. And right here, say, hey, here's a user story to enhance message text component to an Systify to support Markdown. It gives me a title, a business value. Enhancing the user experience by presenting messages with rich text formatting will allow for clearer communication and more visually engaging interactions within the chat interface. That sounds pretty interesting, right? And we go through, it tells the problem, jobs to be done, gives a description, and then if we scroll down a little bit more, it should give me acceptance criteria and Gherkin. And that is all inside this prompt here. And if we look somewhere in here, procedure, it says do all of this stuff, you look at some stuff, do some things, and then user story guidelines, right? It's saying, hey, avoid solutioning. I don't want solutions, I want you to help me define the problem. Keep the story small because I don't want giant epics. Single acceptance criteria, right? Try to do one small thing at a time because I'm trying to do a flow, I'm trying to deploy a little bit. And best principles, right? All user stories should include these. And then what we get out of that is this right here. And part of it is reviewing and doing it. I looked at this and ran this a couple times and it seemed to be okay. So what I would do is I would take this and I would go to my Trello board and I would add it as a card, right? If this was a real thing. And then my job as a product owner has got simpler. I would review, I might format, I might talk to the team, and boom. Now, here's the cool part though. We can take this and we can use AI to implement it. So inside of my UI here, I'm using an IDE called Cursor, and it lets me pick the chat model that I want to use. It even has O1 preview. I'm going to select O1 preview, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste that whole story in there. All right, I'm going to hit Command Enter, and what we'll see is it says it's searching files, it's doing some stuff. Oh, it's slightly off the screen. Okay, I asked, was it edge to edge, and I didn't know. There we go. So it's going through, it's searching. O1 preview is a little a little slower, and it costs a little bit more, but what I typically do is I will take the question I'm asking, I will ask it in O1 preview, and then I'll switch to something like GPT-O and do follow-up questions. And is the magic going to work? If it does not, we can start a new chat. Maybe check this one out. I don't know if I have enough credit or if it's just loading. It should show me like a loading spinner or something. Okay, that example. So let's try GPT-4o just so it goes quicker. And we'll see if that other one comes out. But it's going to do the same thing, search through files, and now it came back with a response. I'm curious if the other one did, but I'm not sure yet. But it's saying, well, you can make a story, markdown formatting, and the message text component, you can follow these steps. Boom. Integrate the markdown parser, that looks correct. I already have that. Modify the chat component, install all this if it's already installed, and here's steps. If this was all I was going to do, this was enough for most junior or mid-level engineers to work with. But it actually gave me a, hey, update this message component. And it said, update the test with it too. It's fantastic. So I'm going to copy that. It's saying for chat message TXX. So I'm going to say chat message TXX. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to paste everything. Oh, hold on. I pasted too much because it only wanted to update the component itself. So my bad. So let's copy this again. And we're going to go from the component right here where it says chat message, because that's where it started. Right? I'm going to come all the way down here. I'm going to paste. Hopefully that plays nice. It's saying Markdown. We're going to import. We're going to import that. And then if we look on my UI, where was that? I think it's this one. Nope, that was. We need to go back to the logo side. We look at this, and it should load up the same message. Oh, okay. We look at that same message, and boom. Isn't this much prettier? Isn't this great? Not a single, like I had to put it in the right place. Cursors, you can actually have it do that for you too, but I don't always trust it. Because I don't know what it's doing. I can run all my tests, I can do my things, but at this point, I would push the story up, and we'll say add formatting to message component. Commit. Get push. And then the fun part of the DevOps side is on GitHub, it's going to run some actions. And inside of here, it's going to run integration tests, it's going to run the unit test, it's going to deploy everything to a CI environment, it's going to run end-to-end tests in the CI environment and deploy to prod. Something wrong in prod, but this will go through and we wouldn't be able to see it. We wouldn't be able to load an old message. But at that point, pretty much in 5-10 minutes, we've added markdown formatting to a UI component. So those who are not software engineers in here, you could almost do this. It would take a little bit, right? But you can see the barrier entry to software development, the barrier entry to like all of these domains has been lowered extremely by what you can do with these LLMs. But the trick is though, it lowers the barrier to entry, but there's like this mid-level or so where it's like it just can't do everything, right? So let's get back to presentation. And before I move on, questions, comments, concerns?
So one thing with Markdown, it's a possible vector attack for vulnerabilities.
Of course.
How would you prevent it from exposing like an attack surface in your application by using
input or output, I guess is what you're asking, right? So there are smaller models, like I actually had up, because that was a similar question, something like Llama Guard. So what you could do, did I still have it up? Okay. So I always talked to someone about this before, but you could take a smaller model like Llama Guard here, which is explicitly directed towards those sort of things, take your input, sanitize it with Llama Guard, put it into your LLM, sanitize the output, and then go from there. And what that does is that can get you that starts getting into that fancy agent architecture, right? And there are tools out there that'll do some of this stuff for you too. But because we're not using the raw chat interface, we're using an agent, we have complete control of what comes in. Well, we have control of validating what comes in and what goes out, and then we can use either LLMs, or you could use like traditional ML, NLP stuff to do the same thing too if you're trying to get efficiency. Llama Guard is a 7D model, runs pretty quick, the latency is pretty low, right? Good, thank you. Anybody else? Is anybody doing anything, not maybe this far, but anything like this in their current employer? Is anybody using AI in their day-to-day stuff? I know a lot. Is this because organizations don't allow you to?
Just to qualify question, I use like ChatGPT or Llama to ask questions, technical questions, or for like brainstorming research stuff. Is that what you mean, or do you mean actually using LLMs, which I'd love to get into? And I'm going to poke Carlos.
So we'll get to it at one point. Let me see. No. We'll go back, but so there we go. So when we talk about how we're using LLMs, are we using it for a product? Are we integrating traditional ML into our product? Are we integrating an LLM? Some other thing. Are we doing it in our process, such as designing, architecting, researching, things of that nature? Or are we using it to generate content, such as that user story, our code, emails, summaries? Does anybody use like the Microsoft Copilot or Otter AI or anything to summarize things like media? Those things are fantastic. So when we think about it, it's like, hey, which one of these things are we doing? Because sometimes with process, even when I'm at like a bank client, I can go onto my personal computer and ask ChatGPT questions and get a little fancy and then carry that knowledge over to my other machine.
Yeah, I like to use the air gap so I'm not putting business knowledge into ChatGPT, and I'm not cutting and pasting the GPT code into production, right? So I've got personal computer, GPT, work computer, and can't cut and paste.
So there's with my current client, they have a private Azure cloud with OpenAI LLMs in it. So there's some, like, you can create applications and do stuff with it, but there is no ChatGPT interface. I've actually hacked Copilot to write a email of the day on alternative investment terms. I'm like, hey, can you write me an email? It's like, I can only help with coding. It's like pretending it's a coding task. And every single day for this client I have, I write a definition of the day for alternative investment terms using GitHub Copilot, because that's what they allow. I figured out how to hack it so I can use it like a normal LLM. That goes back to the security stuff you're talking about. All these things, right? You say, hey, you create an LLM application, like, speak to me like a pirate. And it's like, arr. It's like you have to add in a lot of like pre-prompt and management of the conversation to avoid and not have those, I would say, jailbreak things happen. So AIXP, fantastic. Let's take two terms and put them together. I submitted a trademark report because I didn't see it out there. Fantastic, right? So bridging agile excellence with intelligent innovation. Discover how AI amplifies true programming principles. Explore strategic integration of AI workflows. And learn the synergy. So some core principles, right? As we're trying to do this, one of the things you need to do is continuous feedback. Because as you said, right? Hey, I want to buy a house for $1 billion, right? I want to put mine up there, put yours up there. We're going to trick the AI, right? You have to continually update these things. And you have to continually take in those considerations and figure out what it can do. Like you're like, oh, I want to design this whole system. Like, oh, it doesn't work with that. But oh, maybe creating a markdown update, it can do that fantastic. So we got to figure out where that is. Customer-centric collaboration, right? As we're doing these things, we shouldn't just be sticking AI in products because it's cool, right? Does anybody remember when cryptocurrency was the same thing, right? They started just putting Bitcoin or crypto in their names just because trying to hop with their bandwagon. I created a website called Developer AI, come on the bandwagon, don't do your own. But we need to work with our customers to figure out their needs. You can't just throw AI in a chat interface and say everything's great. You might have to add UX, you might have to do certain things to make it acceptable for the user. And courage to innovate. It takes a lot of courage to say, this thing we've always effing done, I can do it in 5 minutes now. And then tell your boss. Right? Has anybody done that? Like either an email or outreach to a customer, a product brief, something like that. Like this would have taken me hours and ChatGPT did it in 5 minutes and I don't know what to do. Has anyone come across that experience yet? Oh, wait till it happens. You're like, oh shit, what do I do for the next hour? You're like, do I tell somebody? Right? Or do I go play video games? Like, I don't know what the chances, but what we should be doing is coming to and having groups and sharing those innovations around and talking about how we can produce value now that we have more time. AI integration, right? AI is a catalyst in XP, right? We want to try to use AI for better insights. Imagine if you could take a CRM system, anything like whatever customer feedback system you had, and you could integrate all that in, and you take those, what do you say, like, is it a billion records, and you say, hey, what are users complaining about the most? What do they love the most? And you still have to do some verification, but it's going to synthesize that data way faster and give you a summary than anyone can, and then it's up to you to go verify things. But what could have taken weeks, days of a UX person watching every single recording of a person, they should just go watch them. But you can get those transcripts, feed them in, and you will see where people struggle in seconds instead of waiting for your UX person to come back in weeks and, oh damn, the button doesn't, isn't very UI accessible. It blends in the background, right? So, as I mentioned, we have 3 cycles. We think about increment, iteration, and execution. Right, so these are the acronyms that I made. So artificially intelligent extreme programming, vision is visionary integration, strategic oversight navigated by AI. I love ChatGPT because it said, make me an acronym for this term. It'll come back with stuff. So just silly things that are good, right? But LEAP is actually something that our name does, and where we're kind of, someone else created that, but it's the LLM Enhanced Agile Processes. And that's where we focus a lot when we're trying to figure out what we can do is, how can I improve my day-to-day work with AI? And I have articles. I'll put the slides at the beginning. So there's this thing that we created at Arden called AIXP, and what it does is it helps you create a product definition through a chat interface. So if I go to AIXP real quick and I sign in, and this is free, so anybody can do this. We limit it to like, I think it's 2 million tokens or something, which is enough to do like half a dozen products or so. But if you look at this right here, I went through and talked to a chatbot for like 20, 30 minutes, and all of a sudden I have this right here. So my problem for that application, let's say the business case. Let's pick that up. Assistifies revised business model, which eliminates the need for individual open API keys and moves towards a provider-supplied key with a future subscription-based marketplace, significantly brighter than user base. This approach not only, so it goes through in like the North Star, right? The North Star for Assistify revolves around democratizing access to AI for professional enhancement, right? So I mean, a lot of times you go into an organization, they're like, hey, we're gonna build this thing. And they're just like, someone had a good idea, nobody's put a lot of thought into it. We've talked to clients who use this sort of thing, and they're like, this is what I would do in a $20,000 workshop you can do for yourself in 5 minutes. 10 minutes, right? So it's literally like you have a conversation, it tells the users I'm targeting.
Didn't you say you took 20 minutes?
Probably. Somewhere in there, good QA catching. But you know, even with like the features here, right? As I was talking to it, it's like, or the technology, right? It's going to use database management. It's got Google OAuth, what you saw, cloud computing. It's hooked up to Trello. It's blah, 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 right? So we have all these things we can do, and there are many other products out there that do similar things. But when we think about that strategic vision, that 1 to 3 month planning horizon, we can have more intelligent conversations, synthesize more information, and produce better outputs just by leveraging small tools at that planning level. Right? Now, when you think adapt, right, that was like your iteration planning. That's where like I was in there chatting with that assistant. I could make half a dozen user stories and brought them to a planning meeting better than almost every product owner I come across. Because they only give you a title and a one-line description, and you go into it as a dev, you're like, hey, there's 3 devs in this room, and we're gonna talk about this one effing line for like 20 minutes and flesh out some acceptance criteria. You go there with at least something, and then you refine it to what you need. Leap writing playwright test. So I have a video on this, I think, video on this, but go back. I have a YouTube video where I take a screenshot of a application, and I say, write me a playwright test for it. And it goes through and writes the playwright test, you can execute it, and all of a sudden my end-to-end tests are done. It can get a little bit more complicated than that, right? So this is what I was talking about for content, process, and product. Does that make sense? And then when we think about it, right, as we go through, we think about at our longer planning horizon, how can we either integrate content, process, or product into that? Right? Are we building a product? Are we talking about how we can streamline our planning? Or are we actually generating artifacts? And same at every other level. So when I said courage to innovate, take a step back and think about what you do on like, hey, long term I do this, short term I do this, and right now I'm doing this. How could I do that content, process, or product? How can AI help me with this? And again, feel free to ask questions or stop me at any time. So, yeah, okay. And I think how much time do we have left? 15 minutes, is that what I'm saying? There's normally someone who tells you what time card.
Yes, ChatGPT.
What?
Yes, Chat.
Oh, dang, yeah, fantastic, that'd be great. Although ChatGPT, one of the limitations that I run into a lot of times with all of these models, if you go out to OpenAI or any place, you will see when their training data end. So ChatGPT typically ends in October or November 2023, which would not have this conference in it, sadly. But that is a huge limitation a lot of times, because as you're programming, you're like, oh dang, I'm on the newest framework of Angular or React and stuff like that. I'm gonna use ChatGPT to help me. And it knows nothing about it. It doesn't help you at all. You can ask it to go out and scrape a website and do some stuff like get API information, but this is one of the huge limitations right now. If something has happened almost in the last year, it does not know about it. And I think OpenAI and other places are trying to figure out how do they create contracts and negotiate with providers of data such as news places and other things. Because at first they're like, we're just gonna scrape all the web, it's free, everybody. And then all of a sudden you're like, you know, that's a copyrighted site. You know, you probably shouldn't use people's Facebook videos to trade Sora. You probably should do. So I think they're trying to rein it in a little bit, and they haven't released a new update of their training data in almost a year now. They've released brand new models, I don't know, but the training data is kind of still fixed in that spot.
You have 30 minutes.
30 minutes? Oh, dang, fantastic, thank you. AI itself, right? So a lot of times when I talk to people, like, oh, I don't even know where to begin. My kids say, I feel like I missed the boat. 2017 or so is when Google released its paper, right, about transformer architecture. 2022 is when ChatGPT set the world on fire. If you're like, I haven't done any of this now, you are not behind the power curve. As soon as you start touching ChatGPT and thinking about what your business needs are, all of a sudden you are in the, I would say, on the early adoption curve instead of the late majority. We are still very early in this. But the thing is, though, computers have only been around for less than 100 years. Less than 100 years. Neural networks are from the 50s, or 60s, I guess. I mean, they didn't get fancy until we got computers. DARPA, this is where, like, the military was like, you know, kind of like, this is the first internet. I'm sorry. Is that right? Yeah. And then we had Netscape, right? Machine learning comes into the bit. And this is when, like, you start getting a lot of targeted ads and a lot of fun stuff started happening, right? When they start scraping your personal data and you start Google searching something, and next thing you're scrolling on Facebook, and then all of a sudden you got an ad of that thing. So that's when some of this started happening. Deep learning is only, hot dog, not hot dog, right? That's when we started getting image detection. And then the transformer architecture, that's when we're getting into our current wave. Machine learning as a product, right? So when we talk about this, the reason why AI has taken off recently is like, if you wanted to do an ML product before, like, it's not something a layperson off the street could pick up, right? You needed the data scientist, you needed the data set, you needed to somehow train a model, then you need to integrate that model into a pipeline. There were a lot of things you had to do with traditional machine learning, but this is where we have like ad selection, campaign effectiveness. Out of all the people in the room, given all their information, I know who's most likely to respond to my ad. Like, why would I pay for this half of the room when this half is like 80-some% likely, right? So you think about like marketing emails, actual physical advertising. This has been integrated into everything we do since then. If I am like, if I'm a guy, I'm probably not going to get information about purses unless I'm shopping for a purse online for my wife, and then it figures that out, right? And then I'm going to start getting advertisements for that. We started learning about people. Retention and stickiness are two big things. This is how like Facebook and all your social media platforms. Neural networks, this is pattern recognition. A neural network is just what happens is you have an input, you have some fancy math, and you have an output. And then nowadays, there's hundreds or thousands of those. But back in the day, like that 60s time frame, they were like, hey, we can do this and create these models, and we'll have like 1 or 2 layers. I'm like, this isn't very useful. And then all of a sudden we get like these fancy like compute machines and NVIDIA's producing these like huge processors, right? And all of a sudden like, oh, we can have thousands, hundreds of thousands. I don't know how long it actually takes to train like an open AI model, but it used to be like months or something and cost, terawatts of energy and compute. But we can do that now. Granted, we should figure out how to make it more, environmentally conscious. But, compute is becoming less of a problem. And this is generative AI, right? So we're talking about right now generative AI to like produce text. But now you can produce voice, images, video, songs, all these kind of things. Like before, if you're like, oh man, I don't have like a little intro bit to my podcast. We had to go pay somebody to make a song or license it. You can go on to, I think it's Suno AI, and say, make me this kind of beat, make it like a rock thing, and have this, and I'll produce like a minute and a half song for you. You don't have to pay anybody to use that, right? Integration, I said all these are kind of created in Midjourney, but I also like Dolly. I have a little bit of concern about where Grok is going. Has anybody played with X's AI model? XAI, so like you purchase a premium subscription to Twitter, you get their Grok model for free, a chat interface, and it actually has very few guardrails on it. You can produce some horrendous shit with that thing, right? Where Midjourney and OpenAI, whoa. You can't produce, there are some extreme things where they do, but Elon Musk is like, let adults be adults, right? Which has its concerns. Personal reflections and insights, right? So as we do this, right, think about what you're doing. Like, I never did videos before, and I'm like, oh, it's such a pain to edit them. I use a tool called Descript, and I can edit the video in 15, 20 minutes. Whereas before, like whatever I'm recording right now, I'm like, I'll just keep it on my phone because I don't know if somebody asked if I talked about a client or whatever. Now I can go through that transcript, edit it 15, 20 minutes, and be like, boom, publish it, right? What used to take me hours or days. Customer solutions, right? What are your customers doing, right? Are they messing around with some of the things and thinking like, hey, how could I, either in their long, short, or immediate needs, either help them with content, process, or product? What are we doing here? And then time investment, right? So one of the things that really is unfortunate now for me, I have these tools that I've been making, like LangChain. It's like I can build a new agent in like 5 minutes. Gathering the data takes me hours sometimes, right? That is the hard part for me. It's not building these things. It's like, damn, I need to like find a data set. I need to do these things. I scrape things off my website, other people's sites, development and retrieval time. That takes more time than building these assistants nowadays. Right? It is the data, and the quality of the data is the biggest thing. And then prompts, right? making that big prompt, that takes more time than building the agent nowadays, because as I test them out, try to do something called continuous alignment testing. So inside of my GitHub repository, what I have is a series of integration tests, as you said, like, what do you call it, soft assertions? Is that, yeah. So what you can do is, if we go back to GitHub, and inside my pipeline, and imagine this could be any fancy pipeline you have at your employer, or in your personal project, but like this, repeat AI test. What this one is gonna do, it's gonna run the same test over and over and over and over. Where's it at? It's gonna run over and over and over again, and then I'm gonna get a summary of how many passed or failed. This one's a softball, and I ran it 10 times, so 10 out of 10 times, this assistant knows that it is a concierge for Assistify, is what its title is. So it knows its title, but you can get really complex with these sort of things. And as opposed to saying like a pass or fail, you're like, I'm looking for an 80% success rate, I'm looking for a 90. Because what happens is, you switch to a new model, you switch to a different model family, you change spacing in your prompt. I mean, there's all kinds of things that if you just tweak things, you change your tool calls a little bit, all of a sudden you can go from like, hey, I got that 90%, then whatever I did, just don't click it. It is not useful anymore. Oh, and then we'll get back to the PowerPoint. All right, levels of LLM interactions. All right, so first off, we have basic queries to sophisticated integrations. So if you go out to ChatGPT, you can use O1 Preview or anything now. You can upload files, you can talk to it, but you are kind of encapsulated in that bubble. Everything that they're doing, you don't have control over, right? You can't add that, like, that llama guard or that thing in front of it, right? So we have like, think like you have like your basic tool to all the way up to like a medieval sword or something, whatever you want to think about. But right now there's ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and then as I mentioned, Grok is now what I started looking into. But they are great for it if you're just like, write me a bedtime story for my children. Does anybody have kids in here? I mean, a lot of us are adults. Has anybody tried to use ChatGPT to write a bedtime story for your children? Oh, that's how I started. When 3.5 came out, like, make me a story about a unicorn and a dragon fighting, and at the end they become friends and eat ice cream. And then I read it to my kids. And then after doing that maybe 5-6 times, my daughter, who was 16 at the time, was like, Dad, is this another ChatGPT story? I'm like, it sure is, honey. So that's how I just started playing around with it. Then all of a sudden I had this like eureka moment where like, holy shit, I can use this at my job. Like, I have ideas. So that's where, has anyone here not sent a message to ChatGPT or any LLM, has never used it? Don't be shy. Okay, so everybody at least is here. Is that okay? Now you have like custom GPTs, which this is like something that Google started having too. They had like, it's kind of like a platform where you can like create agents, but you don't have that control. You can give it a prompt, it can hook up to an API. I found they're not reliable. You can't, like, there's no coding. They don't have an API to it, which is weird. But what you can do with these is you can upload, maybe in Claude Workspaces, I think is another one. You can upload half a dozen files, and then I can share it there. I could share it with you, and then all of a sudden we have this collaborative space where we can start working on these things, right? So not only can I create a bedtime story based upon the prompt I have, but then I can share that with you. So it's getting a little better. Oh, and then, yeah, RAG, sorry. Is everybody familiar with RAG? Is that a term, like retrieval augmented generation? Does anyone not heard that? It's hard to listen nowadays. And again, don't be shy. There's no shame if you don't know something. But yeah, I mean, even the assistant that I had over there, OpenAI takes care of all that RAG, retrievable context for you. You can upload files, you can create a vector story. How they embed, how the magic happens, I have no clue. It's good enough for our personal projects and prototypes, right? Which then we get into, where I'm at with the thing that I just showed you, right? We're at that assistant agent level, where I'm starting to have prompts, I have API control, I can do tool calls. What I could have done with that product owner assistant that I haven't done yet is I could say, now that I've implemented the story, can you please move that markdown story from in progress to done? And then I could have it call an API and move that story for me, right? How many people here yell at their engineers every day just to keep the effing board up to date.
Getting yelled at.
Yeah. Oh, I can yell. Yeah, I'm one of those who gets yelled at. So that's. But all of a sudden, you have API interactions. You have like consistencies in tasks and stuff. Like you have much more fine-grained control because you could add like a Marangard before and after. What I've been thinking about is O1 preview is not actually available in Assistant yet, but I could take that initial message from the user, use O1 preview in a chat completion, then feed that to my assistant afterwards in that same thread. Yes.
I was just wondering, like, is there something that integrates with Jira to kind of like analyze tickets in the last sprint? Just kind of.
I imagine Atlassian is working with that.
Yeah.
But then that is what I think when I think about the thing that I built, right? Is I want to know, like, hey, tell me what does my burnout look like? What is my velocity? What is my throughput? What are my aging metrics, my flow metrics, things of that nature? How often are we deploying? Because you could hook up to the log and you could get door metrics out of all those things. If Atlassian is not working on it, I would be surprised. Because Jira is a monster, and is anybody here like a Jira ninja? Is there, like their job is to be the Jira ninja and export things and let people know when stuff is done or not done? So there's usually a release train engineer at a large organization, some senior person who basically their job is to understand all the complexities of Jira and produce reports for senior management. That is like a very lucrative role that some people hold. But it could be replaced by an LLM. Or at least enhanced by an LLM. And this is great for, like I said, prototypes and personal use. I would probably not say, like if I went to a client, like, hey, we want to do some AI stuff. I'd say, let's do a prototype in OpenAI or Gemini, or pick your foundation model of choice. And then like, oh, this is great, we should deploy it. It's like, whoa. Let's move on to the real thing, right? Because then we start getting into advanced RAG models where you control your embeddings, you control your data source, you control you might fine tune a model, or you might pick an open source model, or there might be something specific to your use case that thing is specific for. Like, even when we talk about RAG, it used to be like, hey, just grab everything out of the embedding store. Now people are talking about graph RAG. There is embedded RAG, traditional RAG. You have hybrid search where you like grab everything from the embedded database, and then you do a traditional search, and then you rank the two. Like, there are very complicated things, and there are tools out here that help you do this stuff. Most of my clients don't. Like, I haven't got to this point because they're usually like, whoa, I don't want to put my stuff in ChatGPT or whatever. And the current client that I'm on, like I said, they have a cloud stood up. We're actually talking about taking in alternative investment product placement memorandums, which is like the whole thing that describes, like a 100-page document that describes the fund for an alternative investment. Feed that into a couple of fancy agents and extract all the data that traditionally would take a human days or weeks to get a fund off the platform in 10, 15 minutes in a pipeline. We get like about 80% accuracy. We can get a bunch of things. All these documents are different, but we have a very fancy system in a closed Azure cloud for OpenAI. We're using GPT-4o, their most recent model, which came out in August, and we get pretty good results. And what we do is we take all that information, we fill out the form for the user. Like, instead of going in and typing all those things out, you come to the website, you put in the name, upload a document, and then it's an async process where you get a message when it's done. You can keep going on in the flow, but it'll fill everything out, and there's little checkboxes saying verified, incorrect, not correct, and then that actually feeds back into the LLM and the ML pipeline, right? So it's not as fancy as this, but I keep on telling them we can do so much more with this, right? Who wants to read a 100-page document and pull out a fun name? That sounds terrible. Vision, right? So as we are talking about that planning horizon, right? What activities do we normally do when we think about, all right, is anybody in a safe shop or anything like that?
Like scale that.
Yeah. Has anybody ran into safe? Right? Who has had a pleasant product increment planning experience in safe? Oh. Back prior to COVID, there was a company I worked for where we did all this in person, and we got all, like, I had to have them once for one PI and the rest of them were terrible. Because it's usually a scramble of half-done work because everybody's just trying to release up to the very end of the PI and they're like, we should have been planning for the next planning meeting was supposed to be. So we can do a lot of this stuff and have better content and output starting off these activities as opposed to like, the epic is to extract data from a PDF. And it's like, okay, what data? That is what they brought to us like maybe 6 months ago. I'm like, what is the PDF? What is the data? Like, and then like, we start having these conversations and the PI, like, we're gonna get this done this iteration, right? Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, I have no idea what you want, and to commit to it now is ridiculous. We'll look into it. We'll do a site, let's use the engineering. So like, I'm not volunteering to put my name in that crap. I'll do a site. Give me a day. I'll do this. But when you're in product increment and you have the entire company together, you can't say, I'll go research for that for 2 days and come back to you. It's like, we need a decision now. Who are the dependencies? I don't even know what you want. So as we think about that larger horizon, we can do a little bit better to come to those events with a little bit better artifacts. And this is what I showed you, the Apex thing that I showed you. I said, it's Apex, I already that AI, if you want to go in there and have a ChatGPT quite like kind of an experience, talk about a product for 15, 20 minutes, talk about a feature. This presentation, I actually went through an Apex. It's supposed to be for products, but it's like, let's create a presentation. And like, okay, and then most of the stuff in here, I had a conversation for 15, 20 minutes about, and I had a detailed artifact of where I wanted to go with this. AIQ was something that the first time I was trying to play with this, so we can skip that because I moved on to finish updating my size. Relevance to content, process, and product. So as we do this, right, we're thinking of that strategic, right, informed reports and docs, optimized planning. And if you're actually creating a product with AI, at this point we should talk about where does our data come from? What security concerns do we have? What are so on and so forth? We should be talking about planning this out rather than saying, we're gonna put ChatGPT in that thing over there. Like, it should not be a gut decision to jump on the bandwagon. So as we get into iterations, right, like our normal Scrum type events, right? So I like more of a Scrum bond, right? Or sorry, yeah, Scrum bond. So I like Kanban, but I like to have regular cadence of planning and some other things around with it. But a lot of that stuff, like we saw AIXP wasn't ready to use a story. Usually, if an actual product person is doing it, I'm an engineer nerd. I don't think about it as much as I don't have a product line like some individual. But if you take an expert at a product and give them all the information about the code, give them all the information about the status of the work, give them all the information about the customer responses, things like that, meetings that are important notes, and then they sit and have a conversation or talk to a bot or flesh some of these things out, they will come up with wild and cool things. And rather than going to a planning meeting, again, I do that, I write this a lot, but it's like a single Jira ticket with a title. It's like, how long do you think this is going to take to do this? Like, I don't know, a week? Like, I have no idea. Like there are so many details based upon context of the organizations that you need to consider. Yeah, so real-time responsiveness, things of that nature. And you can kind of see that Trello board. So like you were saying, Atlassian, if somebody is not hooking up to a Jira right now and doing scraping and feeding it into an LLM, that would be a fantastic product. AI enhancement to iterations. So one thing that I've done and I have a video on, you can have a mock conversation with ChatGPT. Has anyone played with the, we'll see how well it works real quick. Oh, my phone's recording, so I can't, crap. You can go into the ChatGPT app and do the voice, give it a prompt, say, hey, act like this customer, and act like you're talking to a customer. It's not gonna be the same thing. It's not the same as talking to a customer, but you will discover things, so that way when you are in front of a customer, you already have an idea of what you should be asking, maybe some assumption. Maybe you don't want that, but you have an idea of what the problems a soccer mom has and why she needs a mini. I don't know what your product is, right? But there's particular things that you could set up and say, the internet is full of enough information to give you a good idea of what this user experience will be like. And you can talk to them, or you can chat, right? Meeting summaries, right? Like I said, Microsoft Copilot, which frustrates me that Microsoft has Copilot, ChatGPT has Copilot. I think there's another Copilot out there. Copilot is a terrible name for a product. Don't call it that. But yeah, meeting summaries. I use Otter AI. The first thing like I did with the video though, one thing I always do, like, hey, is it okay if I record this and summarize it using AI? Like, always go out there and like, if somebody says no, like, cool, I don't do that, right? But it's convenience for me, because then I have Otter AI tracks all that stuff. I can actually, it has a chat interface, you can talk to it and ask questions about and all that kind of stuff. And then those meeting summaries, please do not copy, paste, and blindly send them. I would appreciate you reading them and making sure they are correct. Right, that is one thing I see too, is like, they just take that stuff and it's like that didn't happen. This is incorrect. Like, read the summaries, modify them. It's gonna get pretty close. I mean, if you normally, is anyone the note taker, summarizer, yes, that takes a lot of time. Like, all right, I'm going through my handwritten notes and typing in the email. And you take like 20, 30 minutes to summarize a meeting. Is that? Oh, okay, nice, okay. But some people take a lot of time to do these activities, right? I mean, a lot of human capital to write notes about meetings when we can record and summarize in seconds. Design fighting, right? Has anyone played with Claude yet? With Claude artifacts? GPT has came out with, OpenAI came out with something, I forget the name of it. But like, if you go to Claude, and you pay for the premium subscription, they got this idea of artifacts. So I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna say, can you make me a tic-tac-toe game that keeps score? Does anyone have a favorite UI framework they use? Material UI, is that good? Bootstrap?
Okay.
What? Okay. Okay, let's do Material UI. Can you make me a tic-tac-toe that keeps score in React using Material UI? Does anyone have favorite colors? Color?
Pink.
Pink. Can one player be pink? Another color?
Blue.
Blue. The other player be blue. And when someone wins, it shows a celebration. Yeah, okay. We'll see what that comes back with. So as it's gonna go through, and okay, so it's over here. This is the artifact that it's creating. This alone is cool. Well, when it gets done, it's actually gonna render the component, and we should be able to see it. So let's see. Hopefully, I don't know if adding a celebration or anything is gonna make it too complicated. Who knows? We'll see. And then over here. Oh, terrible. Fix it with Claude. So it couldn't pull in the fire. The fireworks thing was too much. It said it couldn't pull that in. So let's try to remove that. It was a terrible example. What it should have done is it'll produce a tic-tac-toe game. Then we could change colors. We could change icons. We could do anything just in this chat interface here. Tic-tac. Ignore the fireworks. One more time. Okay, that's my bad. I should prep this one ahead of time. That's the first time I said try to add fireworks. But it can't pull in external libraries. It can do normal React stuff and things of that nature. Alright, one more time when it's finished. Let's hopefully it comes up. If it does not work, we will move on. What? I should have been able to pick it up though. We're gonna go vanilla. Last time.
What did you type in?
Maybe it's tic-tac-toe game in React. Come on. There we go. Terrible. I don't like what it made. I don't, clearly it's not mine. Right, but regardless, I'm trying to get a little bit too crazy. But you could play with this, and usually it produces a nice tic-tac-toe board. You could say, hey, use Bootstrap, use MUI, use this design thing I have here, change the color, make the icon this. Like normally what you would have like a designer in Figma taking hours, you can prototype yourself pretty quickly using some of these tools. So terrible example, usually goes a lot smoother than that. Thank you, live demo. What? You can use it for free. The artifacts are in beta. I don't know if they made it available to free users though, but it's like $15. I mean, if you, hopefully you can expense it or take that and just play with it and cancel your monthly. If you like it, go ahead and use it some more. A lot of people like Claude over ChatGPT. Like everybody has a favorite LLM to talk about, right? Okay, and we have 5 minutes. I think that'll probably. Does anybody have any questions? I guess I have more to talk about.
Do you have a list of like your favorite that you've been talking about, like LLM Interactions, something that goes along with this presentation that?
I could probably put something together, but I do not like. I guess we're talking about like, I guess a stack is what you would say.
Yes.
Okay, so my favorite right now, my personal is OpenAI because they tend to be ahead of the power curve and they do a lot of the stuff for you. And that is fantastic for like say prototyping, personal projects, things of that nature. For a client, I would suggest the same, but then I would move over to something more sophisticated once we're saying, hey, this is a good idea, let's build it.
Such as?
But what?
Such as? What's the next?
Okay, so then what we did for another client, we have set up it was a llama model. So it was a llama model. And then we used, let me fix it back. That Apex product that I showed you, all that's done in LangChain. And it uses OpenAI models, but as you start to scale and get into like real things, I would not say write your own. Right, so if you look up anything with like the word L-A-N-G, Lang in front of it, right? Lang chain, Lang something, Lang, right? That's usually a good place to start looking for like as you need to do orchestration and more complex things, the visibility and things of that nature into your models.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
So someone mentioned Jira earlier, getting into restores. What do you recommend or say for sources that are probably internal that contain proprietary data, like getting stories from Jira, commit logs from GitHub, whatever, and matching that without giving the LLM public company all of your internal data?
So
What
there's-
solutions are there for private, LLMs for your data?
Yeah, I don't know.
Either self-hosted or the equivalent of a VPC for an agent.
Yes, so like I mentioned, my current client is a large bank. They actually work with Azure and OpenAI and a private cloud where that is not a problem. Right?
So if you've got a big enough wallet, you can
Yes! That is the trick right now because I really love startups. I hate enterprises. I really love startups and they don't have that wallet, and that is a large concern for a lot of them. But at the same time, how much of your information is so proprietary that you think somebody's going to use it? Like I hear people like, oh, Copilot is reading my code and using it for training. It's like, are you writing new algorithms? Do you really think the things that you are writing are so unique and custom beyond a CRUD application that?
Well, I think it's the perceived risk and the lack of knowledge. There are, everyone in here probably has in your Jira or somewhere things like production passwords and comment or something
Okay.
sensitive like that. That actually isn't that useful for someone else, but is a high risk.
Yeah, put
You're not
my
going to tolerate.
AWS credentials in there. And
Yeah, something like that.
So there are security concerns like that.
Or
but
your repos.
if you take those things, what I would suggest is either doing like an in-house model. So you can get like a semi-beefy machine and run like a smaller model on it pretty easily in AWS, even a physical machine. Like this Mac M2 right here can run like a 7 billion parameter. Like as I code, I played around with that stuff just in almost real-time latency, and I'm sure you could get up to more complicated models and keep everything in-house if necessary. So it would take a box, an open source model, and something like LangChain. Okay, and then you can keep everything internal. But that is a lot of work for stuff that's already out there.
That's doable. You can say, we're going to cut a couple of engineers and dedicate 6 months to have them learn how to do that, giving you a few $1,000s worth of hardware and a couple $100,000 of engineering pay.
Yeah.
And then you've got a proof of concept that is digesting your Jira or your ServiceNow or whatever it is.
Or what you could do is, like, you have, like, let's say all of you are agents, all the sensitive information. Oh, sure, looking at the terrible example. I was gonna move it over here and be like, this is our special bot, right? So, oh, thank you. Because I work with a government. I used to work with the ballistics company. And like, oh man, we gotta get everything government qualified. It's like, no. Ballistics calcs goes over here, everything else is over here. The only thing we have to have at AWS GovCloud is that crap, right? So isolate and then use tools otherwise, right? If there are, just because you have one intellectually sensitive thing, doesn't mean you can't do this. You can isolate it, and that can be a separate agent that interacts in that.
Yeah, the biggest problem is you don't know what sensitive information is where.
Oh, then I was gonna say, ask the LLM to find that within a piece of the LLM.
Yeah, feed it all in the
Right.
public.
Have that guy scan all the other agents' data and make sure no other chairs belong over there. Go over there. Granted, it's a little bit more complex than that, and who knows what's in the chair.
I have one more, but I think we're out of time, so I don't know if you.
I have nowhere to.
Okay.
If everybody else does.
So my question is, are you concerned with using all this great stuff, right? People not actually developing the skills that they need.
Oh,
in the
absolutely.
work that they're doing. So for myself, I think the most learning that I did was when I had a problem and I spent hours, days trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
With the assistive technology, you can get that answer quickly and not even understand what the question really was about. And you may run into a situation where people use the skill, the work that they did using assistants on their resume and apply for a job that maybe will not allow them to use those and be clueless in that new work, even though on paper they have the experience, right?
Yeah, agreed. And I think as we have moved through that software development landscape going from 1945 until now, we started off with zeros and ones and visible tubes. We moved to like languages like C and that thing on our, assembly and C, and then we have higher level languages. What we have been trying to do is express intent to the machines, and that is a skill. So that engineer may not be as hard technical doing, implementing bubble sort or whatever your worst sort algorithm is by accident and learning those mistakes. But what they get instead is they get to say, hey, I need to sort this list. That's it, right? They don't need to know sorting algorithm. They need to know that Java has a sort, TypeScript has a sort, Python has, every language has a sort, right? But like, what happens is we start communicating at higher levels of abstraction. And I would find it hard to believe in, maybe 10 years from now, many companies it's like, hey, I have a horse. I'm gonna stick with this horse, but there's cars, right? There will be a breaking point where that junior engineer doesn't need to know about things. Like I know some assembly language programming, I know some archaic crap that I will never use again. Through college.
So I think I'm not convinced, but I appreciate the perspective.
Yeah.
And I think in 10 years, there's a chance that we'll look at it, at what you said, and say, like, people thought that this is going to be what will happen, but we learned that there are those issues and we cannot really make it happen, right?
Yeah, I agree. And there have been studies that found that when people use ChatGPT to answer questions and solve problems, that retention is dramatically lower compared to what you're saying. So there are concerns there, but I think the problem shifts from, are those things necessary? Because I can do a lot more. And granted, I've got 20 years of experience, right? So I don't know what the junior experience coming out of boot camp is. It's too far for me to even think about.
I think that's what the concern is, what you're talking about. Because I think that's where your concern is, right? Because I think for senior people, these tools, massive productivity boost because you can assess it, you can validate
Because
it.
you already know the system.
But you know really well. So for a junior, they're going, oh, I can just build things really quickly now. But you're like, hey, do you actually know what you just built? Do you know how to test it?
Or maintain it.
Or maintain it, exactly. Right? So it's fine concepts, but going to prod is a very different ballgame. So I totally agree with your concern there. And honestly, I don't think there's a great answer. There's going to be some junior people that will do exactly that. But I think it's up to us as seniors to help them out and be like, as you're doing this, make sure that you're actually understanding what you're doing. if you're gonna go with a TDD approach, to here's the tests I want, and then generate the thing to adhere to that, that might be helpful too. But now they have to think about, how do I actually do the TDD or write those scenarios? But that might be a good exercise. He was showing like sharing GPTs with people. You might have a GPT that's like, it's a programming one, but it also explains everything in depth for you. So when it makes a React component, it's explaining line by line, here's what I'm doing here. Here's why I use a use effect here, why I did a callback here. And try and as an organization kind of promote the culture of using it to help and learn, not to do it for you. Because I would agree that I think junior people will have the toughest time because they will use it and then.
What you can do is, just like you were saying, so this is the role where you're at, this is what I tell my cursor to do. You could almost like, I don't want to say handicap it, but you could say, I am a junior, don't give me solutions, help me out. Like, there are things you could do for that, right? Although that takes explicitly trying to have senior or someone.
So can you
navigate.
share that, like, that training program?
I'll share. But it's, this is just what I had inside of my cursor, right? Work like an expert in screen programming, prefer test-driven development, prefer functional programming, do not write tests or protect their private, specifics or Python node, and how I like comments.
Oh, okay.
So that's just
I
my.
can't read it.
Okay, I'll post it on
It's a
LinkedIn.
good idea to have like templates though, and be like, here's one that I use at my work, and that people can grab this and
Yeah,
copy
like,
it to their.
because I tried to use a custom GPT to review my talk, and it fit there.
I don't think the custom GPTs are not my favorite. Like I said, they have a lot of list from. Sorry, our next speaker is up. This is everybody. Thank you. Reach out, LinkedIn, come find me. Thank you for attending. Give feedback if you want. It helps us. And I need to stop my recording. Okay.